Taipo fire death toll now at 156 as the government sets up an independent committee to probe the disaster. Compensations announced for domestic helpers caught in the Taipo fire. And LegCo election to go ahead on Sunday. Hello and welcome to TVB News. I'm Melissa Hekalea. Police on Tuesday said 5 more body remains were found at Wang Chung House, bringing the death toll of the Taipo fire to 156. About 30 people remain missing. Authorities say Wang Chi House residents can return to units to collect belongings on Wednesday and Thursday. Mimo Singai reports.
Members of the Disaster Victim Identification Unit, or DVRU, continued their search at Wang Chung House on Tuesday morning. At around noon, the unit brought out a body wrapped in a blue bag. Speaking to the media in the evening, the police at DVRU had discovered 5 more bodies inside Wang Chung House. The force said 127 bodies have been identified, while 29 have not. Meanwhile, authorities said households of Wang Chi House, the only block that did not catch fire, will be allowed to return to the units from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. to collect belongings between Wednesday and Thursday.
It is a one-off occasion for the residents to go back and take back their properties, so they cannot move back in.
Authorities said that they have completed the search work at 6 buildings, adding that the entire process will be concluded within 3 weeks. Numbers 9, TVB News.
Chief Executive John Lee pledged to set up an independent committee to examine the cause of the deadly fire in Taipo. A judge will lead the committee to also review systemic causes behind the incident in a bid to prevent similar tragedies from happening again. Samantha Lee reports.
The government has set up 3 task groups for the tragic fire at Wanfu Court, including a joint investigation team by the police and the ICAC. Standing in front of a black backdrop, the city leader Johnny announced the establishment of a judge-chaired independent committee ahead of his weekly meeting with the Executive Council. He vowed to complete the probe as fast as possible to bring the suspects to court.
The modus operandi of criminals change every day. They are evil. They are cunning. We must uncover the truth, ensure that justice is served, let the deceased rest in peace, and provide comfort to the living.
Lee said he had identified a number of issues to be addressed and pointed to a need for systemic reform. These include the quality of materials, supervision of construction work, effective operation of fire safety systems, as well as roles and responsibilities of regulatory personnel. More areas to work on include the conflicts of interest, accountability in Taipo fire, and adequacy of legislation and penalties. An independent committee differs from a commission of inquiry, which was set up under the Commissions of Inquiry Ordinance to probe matters of public importance. Both are chaired by a judge. However, the Commission of Inquiry can summon anyone to attend and give evidence as standard court proceedings. And the independent committee this time has no power like that. Previously, Hong Kong set up a commission of inquiry to investigate matters, such as the Lammer Island ferry collision that killed 39 in 2012, and the construction scandal of the Sha Tin to Central Link project in 2018. When asked as to why he deserved to keep his job after the large death toll in the incident, Lee had this to say.
Fire happens in different cities, despite different cities' government and community try their best to do it. We will do our best to prevent it, but it's exactly what the government must do now to ensure that some system failure, which may have been accumulating over years, we need to strengthen the system. We need to reform it.
Samantha Lee, TVB News.
The government confirmed today that 10 foreign domestic workers were killed in the Taipo fire. Families of the deceased will each receive up to $800,000 of compensation from the government. Samantha Lee has more.
Official figures indicate there were 235 foreign domestic workers affected in the devastating blaze at Wanfu Court. At least 10 of them sacrificed their lives, while 30 are still missing. Secretary for Labor and Welfare Chris Sun met with Secretary for Migrant Workers of the Philippines, Hans Leo J. Kadag, at the government's headquarters this afternoon. Chris Sun said families of the deceased workers will each be given over $500,000 in statutory compensation, together with $200,000 of a token of solidarity, and $50,000 for funeral. For injured workers, each will receive $50,000 or $100,000, depending on their stay in hospital. On top of that, every survivor will get a payout of $20,000. So how to ensure the financial aid will go to the right person?
We'll work through, for the Filipinos, with the PCG, the Council Generals of the Philippines, to number one is to identify and to confirm that they are the one. And then we were going to distribute through, in Hong Kong, through the Labor Department.
Kadak thanked the SAR government for their medical aid for the injured workers.
And we're so thankful for the successful medical procedure for our national who was initially in critical stages and brought to the ICU, but with a successful medical procedure, and should I say an innovative one, she has been saved and is on recovery mode. And we're hoping to have her home soon with her family.
Samantha Lee, TVB News.
Director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, Xia Baolong, arrived in Shenzhen yesterday for a detailed briefing on Hong Kong's recovery operations following the Taipo fire. Chief Executive John Lee expressed gratitude for Xia's concern. John Lee thanked Xia Baolong for coordinating 2 batches of support supplies, some of which have already arrived in Hong Kong. Lee said he had also liaised with Xia, who confirmed the work done by the SAR government. Police have set up 10 hotlines for members of the public to provide videos or photos related to the Taipo fire. The hotlines operate from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day. Meanwhile, the police say they've arrested a 27-year-old mainland woman on suspicion of scamming disaster funds by setting up a fake local charity website. The police say they received a report on the webpage on Saturday and managed to remove the site on the same day. Some Wang Fuk Court residents hope to receive more direct help from the government after the devastating blaze. Mimo Singhai reports.
The deadly fire has not only taken away the lives of more than 100 Wang Fuk Court residents, it has also destroyed the homes of many. At Taipo Community Center, the site where fire victims can apply for relief and collect aid, some would like to see better support. For affected individuals, the relief, such as the government's emergency cash fund of $10,000, was incompatible with what they had lost. An elderly couple who lived at one Thai house said the government's housing support was insufficient and confusing. They told me to stay in Yunnan or Aberdeen. What is wrong with them? They don't have any accommodations closer to Taipo, she asked. Mrs. Ju said they are staying with her daughter in Shenzhen, but they have traveled to the community center every day for the past few days, hoping to obtain the latest information. Their biggest wish is to live in a proper flat again. I am now 80 years old. I have mobility issues and sciatica, she added. News 9, TVB News.
General elections for the 8th term of the Hong Kong Legislative Council will proceed as scheduled on Sunday. Chief Executive John Lee said the election process will not hinder relief efforts for those affected by the Taipo fire, and that completing the election offers a strong foundation for maintaining social stability. Nazvi Karim with more.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have made a decision that the Legislative Council elections originally scheduled for December 7th will be held as planned, Chief Executive John Lee announced. In the wake of the tragic blaze at Wang Fuk Court in Taipo that claimed 156 lives and affected at least 2,000 people, the government had suspended publicity and promotional activities related to the LegCo elections. John Lee said the election date is legally mandated, and ensuring that the process is completed on schedule is a matter of respect for the constitutional order and rule of law. In addition, he said it provides strong support for maintaining social stability and post-disaster reconstruction. Enabling the new legislators to assume their duties as soon as possible will allow for faster and more effective progress in crucial tasks, including disaster relief, recovery and reconstruction, as well as the review and reform of relevant laws, said the CE. Many tasks require Legislative Council deliberation, approval of funding, and legislation before implementation. This is the most responsible approach towards Hong Kong's future. Lee also pointed out that aiding disaster victims and preventing similar incidents from happening requires social reforms, and even more so, LegCo members with constitutional status. My most needed reform partners are undoubtedly Legislative Council members, said Lee. They have all experienced this fire and shared the pain. They will certainly work with the government to jointly promote reform. He indicated that once the new LegCo members are in place, he would start to work with them immediately to amend laws and reform systems. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
Still ahead, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro refuses to bow to U.S. calls to leave his country. China sends another letter to UN chief over Japan's remarks on Taiwan. And Pope Leo urges young Lebanese to build a future of peace. Welcome back. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro is running out of options to step down and leave his country under U.S. guaranteed safe passage, following a short call with U.S. President Donald Trump last month, where Trump reportedly refused a series of requests from the Venezuelan leader. This, as the White House said Monday, that a Navy admiral acted within his authority and the law when he ordered a second strike on an alleged drug boat in the Caribbean Sea in a September U.S. military operation that's come under bipartisan scrutiny. Tracy Furness reports.
The crowd is chanting, "Maduro, my friend, the people are with you." Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro Monday defiantly dismissed increasing pressure from the US, telling the people of his country he would remain steadfast and swearing absolute loyalty to them. Maduro saying, "We do not want a slave's peace, nor the peace of colonies. Colony never, slaves never. Freedom, republic, peace with dignity. That's the peace. Rest assured that I will never ever fail you." Military tensions between the US and Venezuela have been escalating after the Trump administration had ordered a series of strikes against alleged drug boats off Venezuelan territory, with a second strike ordered to target survivors in one case, which Congress said it is now reviewing.
White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt confirmed that on September the 2nd there was a strike against a vessel where there were a couple of survivors, and that a second strike was ordered to sort of target those survivors. She said a Navy admiral had given the order, and that it was done according to the rules of engagement militarily, and that it was all lawful, and that the president has the right to sort of strike against drug boats that seem to do harm in the United States. That's interesting because the president himself had suggested yesterday that he wasn't sure a second strike had happened, and he wasn't sure that it had been authorized by the Defense Department.
Lawmakers cited a published report that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth issued a verbal order for a second strike that killed survivors on the boat in that September incident. The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying President Trump wouldn't have wanted that, not a second strike. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has warned that China posed national security threats to Britain, but defended his government's decision to step up engagement with the country, saying closer business ties were in the national interest. China's ambassador to the UK said China firmly opposes the UK's remarks, which spread so-called China threats and other unfounded accusations against the country, which he says is interfering in China's internal affairs. He said that the embassy hopes the UK will recognize the situation, correct its mindset, treat China's development rationally and amicably, pursue a positive and pragmatic policy towards China, and work with China in the same direction. Pope Leo XIV celebrated Lebanon's tradition of interfaith coexistence as a beacon of hope for a conflict-torn region, as he asked for the divine gift of peace alongside the country's Christian and Muslim religious leaders. Leo is near the end of his first overseas trip as Pope, a visit to Turkey and Lebanon, ancient biblical lands where he's championed the advancement of Christian and wider religious unity and the cause of peace. Daniel Rowell tells us more.
Pope Leo XIV received a sincere welcome from the crowds and from its spiritual leaders on his first full day in Lebanon. Leo opened his day by praying at the tomb of St. Chab al-Makhlouf, a Lebanese saint revered by many Christians and Muslims. Every year, hundreds of thousands of pilgrims, Christian and Muslim, visit the tomb at the hilltop monastery of St. Maroun, overlooking the sea at Anaya, around 40 kilometers from Beirut. The Pope later attended an interfaith meeting in Martyrs Square in Beirut. Lebanon's Christian patriarchs and Sunni, Shia and Druze spiritual leaders gathered under a tent. After listening to hymns and readings from the Bible and Quran, Leo praised Lebanon's tradition of religious tolerance as a beacon for the divine gift of peace in the region. At the end of the event, the spiritual leaders planted an olive sapling as a symbol of peace. Leo ended the day at a jubilant rally of Lebanese youth at Pekerki, the seat of the Maronite Church, where he sought to encourage them to persevere and not leave the country as many others have done.
Lebanon's history is interwoven with glorious moments, but it is also marked by deep wounds that are slow to heal. These wounds have causes that transcend national borders and are intertwined with very complex social and political dynamics. Dear young people, perhaps you regret inheriting a world torn apart by wars and disfigured by social injustice. Yet there is hope, and there is hope within you. You have a gift that many times we adults seem to have lost. You have hope. You have time. You have more time to dream, to plan, and to do good. You are the present, and the future is already taking shape in your hands. You have the enthusiasm to change the course of history.
Leo's visit comes at a newly tenuous time for the small Mediterranean country after years of conflict, economic crises and political deadlock, punctuated by the deadly 2020 Beirut port blast. Amid the conflict in Gaza and worsening political tensions in Lebanon, Leo's visit has been welcomed by the Lebanese as a sign of hope. Christians make up around a third of Lebanon's 5 million people, giving the nation on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean the largest percentage of Christians in the Middle East. While Lebanon is now often cited as a model of religious coexistence, it hasn't always been that way. The country's civil war from 1975 to 1990 was largely fought along sectarian lines. Dan Rahul, TV News.
China's permanent representative to the United Nations sent another letter to Secretary General Antonio Guterres, refuting the unreasonable arguments made by the Japanese envoy and insisting the retraction of Sanai Takaichi's remarks about Taiwan. He said Japan was breaking free from the exclusively defense-oriented principle, alerting the international community of its right-wing forces' ambitions to expand military capabilities. Danny Zhou has the report.
The Japanese Prime Minister claimed last month during her diet questioning that a Taiwan emergency involving the use of force could be seen as a survival-threatening situation for Japan. On Monday, China's envoy to the UN, Fu Song, said he had sent a second letter, which will be circulated to all UN member states as an official document of the General Assembly. Fu has voiced firm opposition to Tokyo's response to his first letter criticizing Takaichi's remarks sent on November the 21st. This, as Japan's permanent representative to the UN, Kazuyuki Yamazaki, said in a letter to Guterres that China's claims were unsubstantiated. Fu noted that the Japanese side sought to shift blame and kept dodging the key issues as to what exactly is their so-called consistent position on the Taiwan question. International legal instruments such as the Cairo Declaration and the Potsdam Proclamation long ago confirmed China's sovereignty over Taiwan, and the Japanese government has since reaffirmed such a position in a series of treaties. Fu emphasized that Takaichi's erroneous comments openly challenge the post-war international order and constitute a serious violation of the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. He urged Tokyo to uphold its political commitments and immediately retract the PM's wrongful remarks if it seeks to develop stable ties with Beijing. Otherwise, the Japanese side should bear all the consequences arising therefrom. In Japan, hotels, restaurants and travel agencies that rely heavily on Chinese guests are feeling the pinch of simmering tensions. Vice President of the Okinawa Resorts Division warned tens of thousands of operators could be affected if the situation drags on next year. Several opposition leaders, including Policy Chief of the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, Satoshi Honjo, and Tako Yamazoe from the Japanese Communist Party, have publicly prompted Takaichi to retract what they described as extremely dangerous comments that run counter to relevant legislation. Sources say a cross-party group of Japanese lawmakers met with Chinese Ambassador Hu Jianghao in Tokyo. The group's Secretary General stressed the significance of exchanges between lawmakers of the two sides to ease the strain, with the hope of visiting China later this year. Also on Monday, the China Coast Guard said it warned and drove away a Japanese fishing vessel which illegally entered territorial waters of the Diaoyu Islands. A spokesperson said the Coast Guard would continue to conduct rights protection law enforcement operations there and called on Japan to cease all acts of infringement and provocation. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
That sounds exhausting. Ski lift is better. Anyway, that is the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.